All right, today I want to go over a lawsuit between Lost Surfboards and Lady Gaga. Before I covered Patagonia versus Patagonia, this one is a little bit more serious. So let's go over the facts first. Lost Surfboards by Mayhem is the name of a line of surfboards that is owned by Matt Biolis. Now, Matt has been using this name in commerce for surfboards and clothing and things like that for about 40 years. He said that in the 1980s, he was part of a band called Mayhem Ordnance, and he got his nickname from that. Anyway, he's been using Mayhem ever since then. So Lost Surfboards is a sponsor for an awful lot of the top surfers on the planet. And so, for example, I'm going to look at their page here and cheat a little bit. They've got Griffin Colapinto, who regularly gets in the top 5 in the World Surf League. Yago Dora, who is last year's world champ. They've got Carissa Moore, who's a 5-time world champ. Carolyn Marks, who's a 1-time world champ. They've got other people like Cole Hauschman, Gabriella Bryant. They've got quite a few very impressive surfers who surf their surfboards. As a result, pretty much everybody in the surfing industry knows about Lost Surfboards. Now, Mayhem, Matt Biolis's nickname and the name that's been trademarked by him, is also the name of Lady Gaga's 7th album. And her tour, she has a tour that used to be called the Mayhem Tour, and now it's called the Mayhem Ball Tour. And she uses for this tour a logo that looks remarkably like Matt's Mayhem logo. So before we go on, I'd like you to take a look at a few things I'm going to put up on the screen. These include the Lost Surfboards Team Riders websites. You can see some of the top names that seem to like Lost Surfboards very much in terms of what they ride. I don't know if any of you ever watched the World Surf League's contests, but I used to compete surfing contests way back when I was in college, and it's kind of fun to watch because the announcers always put in a good word for the shapers, and that's become very pronounced the last year. So you'll see something like, wow, Yago Dora sure looks good on his Mayhem surfboard. Oh, here he goes. Yago Dora got a tube ride. Looks like he's really using his Mayhem surfboard really well today. And it's kind of funny because it's like such an obvious product promotion. But anyway, so you listen to this, you hear an awful lot about Mayhem surfboards. So here's the Mayhem team, and this is just the first page. But anyway, see an awful lot of names there that you would recognize if you follow surfing. Here's Lady Gaga's album, and again, a comparison of her use of Mayhem versus the Lost Surfboards use of Mayhem. So now you've seen what Lady Gaga did with a logo that, at least in my mind, looks remarkably similar to Matt Biolis's Mayhem logo that he's been using for years and years. So let's talk about what actually happened here. So Lady Gaga released her 7th album entitled Mayhem in March of 2024, and then she began her Mayhem tour, which I guess has been renamed the Mayhem Ball Tour, and sold clothing with her version of the Mayhem logo on it. Lost wasn't pleased and notified her that they considered this trademark infringement, and she continued to sell records under Mayhem, continued her Mayhem tour or her Mayhem Ball Tour using a very similar logo, and she sold merchandise, namely hoodies and shirts and stuff like that, that contain the Mayhem logo that again looks remarkably like Matt's Mayhem logo. So Matt sent Matt's attorneys, Lost's attorneys sent a cease and desist letter. Lady Gaga's attorneys ignored it, so Lost sued. And if the lawsuit, the trademark complaint is actually quite lengthy, so I'm going to kind of generalize and summarize it. But essentially, they're suing for trademark infringement, among other things. Now, unfortunately for Lost, the trademark that they got on Mayhem is not a stylized mark, it's a words only mark. Now, when you file for a trademark, you can either get the words only or you can get a stylized version. And I'll often tell my clients, if you think you might change the look of the logo in the next 5 or 10 years, why don't you just go for a words only, and that's going to protect you. But if your client was, say, UPS, you'd say, well, yeah, we've got to get UPS in the brown and gold, because that's going to be your identity for the next 70 years or so. So anyway, they just have a trademark on the word Mayhem in class 25, which covers clothing. Here's the actual trademark. So again, I'm going to kind of generalize and summarize this lawsuit. This is intended for mostly for my surfer friends. It's not intended to be, an MCLE, continuing legal education, or anything like that. So basically, Lost is alleging 3 things that they think Lady Gaga did unfairly. The first is trademark infringement. They're saying, hey, we have a trademark in Mayhem for clothing. You're using Mayhem on clothing, and your Mayhem looks really a whole lot like our use of Mayhem, so you're infringing our trademark. The second thing they're alleging is trademark dilution, and this is where, even if you're not infringing, by your use of a similar name or a similar logo, man, you're really making our trademark less valuable. You're kind of blurring the lines between what is our trademark and what might be somebody else's trademark. And then the third ground, and this is actually a whole lot of different causes of action, but they're alleging unfair competition, false designation of origin, let's see what else, false advertising, unfair business practices, unfair competition. They're basically saying in these causes of action that Lady Gaga's use of Mayhem on her hoodies and her t-shirts is going to cause consumer confusion to the point where a consumer may not know, am I buying the Mayhem from Lost Surfboards, or am I buying the Lady Gaga Mayhem? So these are commonly thrown into most lawsuits. So anyway, the first step that Lost did, which may come back to bite them a bit, is they filed for something called a preliminary injunction. And with a preliminary injunction, you're asking a judge to say, okay, I think there's a good chance the plaintiff Lost is going to win. Lady Gaga, stop selling your t-shirts, stop selling your sweatshirts. Now, the burden to get a successful preliminary injunction is very high, because you can cause quite a bit of harm to the other party. So the first thing you have to show is you have to show irreparable injury. So Lost would have to show that it would be irreparably damaged if Lady Gaga continues to sell her t-shirts. I don't see that being a good argument, because even if Lost were to succeed in the long run, the Lady Gaga, all she has to do is say, okay, I lost. This is how much profit I made off my t-shirts. Here you go, Lost. You can have my profit. And so it's not really, I don't see it as being an irreparable injury. Then the judge also looks at the balance of harm. So if you give a preliminary injunction against Lady Gaga, she's going to have to really change things around quite a bit. Lost really doesn't have to change things around. They can just wait until the end, see if they win, collect their money. And then another factor is the likelihood of success. And so the Lost would have to show it has a very good chance of succeeding on the trademark infringement and the other claims. And this is where it became a problem. And unfortunately, Lost, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I'm sorry, I'm a surfer. I'll try to be perfectly objective here, but I'm a surfer, and so I'd like to see the surfers win sometimes. Um, so lost the request for a preliminary injunction, and the judge's ruling was actually pretty damaging to Lost's cause, and the judge said that Lady Gaga's use of Mayhem was artistically relevant to her album and does not explicitly mislead consumers. Okay, I tend to agree with that. Then the judge said that the Lanham Act, which regulates trademarks and trademark infringement, does not imply. Oh boy, okay, that was, and the judge goes further to say, and I'm going to read this from the judge's decision. Lost cannot succeed on its claims for trademark infringement and false designation of origin. Okay, that was pretty bad for Lost. So again, the burden to succeed on a preliminary injunction is a very high one, and it should be a high one. But the judge went beyond just denying the preliminary injunction. He put in there some other stuff that's going to be pretty damaging. Anyway, Lady Gaga's attorneys said it was a total victory. It wasn't a total victory. And then they went. It wasn't, because first of all, they're going to have to file what's called a motion for summary judgment to get the trademark infringement and the other claims, that the false designation of origin claims, thrown out of the lawsuit. But law still has a number of other claims in there, and they can always appeal the judge's ruling. So I don't see this as being a total victory. It may have been a total victory on the preliminary injunction. It wasn't a total victory on the entire lawsuit. And then the Gaga's attorney went on to say, and I quote, "It reaffirms that trademark law cannot be used to censor expressive works or chill artistic expression." Remember that phrase. It's going to come in handy a little bit later. So anyway, this just means they lost the preliminary injunction. It doesn't mean they lost the lawsuit, although the extra stuff the judge threw in there is not beneficial to Lost, and it's very beneficial to Lady Gaga's side. So, again, the bottom line here is that I think right now, the facts of the case, and particularly this judge's statement on the preliminary injunction, I think they favor Lady Gaga. And it's like, but let's go into the meaning of this case, because with every case and with every situation, there's always a legal side to it. Then there's kind of a practical or ethical side to it. Now, Lady Gaga appears to pride herself on being very original. From what I understand, she writes her own music. She apparently helps design these costumes. Now, I can't name a single Lady Gaga song, and I can't name a single Lady Gaga album other than Mayhem, because I had to look that one up. She really, I see pictures of her like once a month in the news feed I get, and she's always wearing like some, egg on her head costume or something like that. She appears to be a very creative person. Then, in all fairness, nothing against Lady Gaga, I also can't name a single Bad Bunny song or a single Kid Rock song. So that was from the latest Super Bowl fiasco. So perhaps I'm not as musically inclined as I should be. But anyway, I've never met Lady Gaga or Matt Biolas. Matt and I share some mutual friends / business associates. From what I've heard, he's supposed to be a really good guy. And again, Lady Gaga, she seems to really have her heart in the right place, seems to be a good person. From everything I say, seems to be very, very artistic and creative. But if this case gets to the deposition phase, and a deposition phase is when Lost's attorney hauls Lady Gaga's creative team onto the stand, and they have to swear under penalty of perjury where they came up with this idea. And I'll tell you this much, if her creative team, if any of them are surfers, this is going to be very difficult for them to wiggle around the fact that they were probably very well aware of Lost Surfboards by Mayhem, and they probably have seen that Mayhem logo before. And I don't know what they're going to say to justify such a similar use of it, unless they just continue to rely on that this is artistic expression. But anyway, I hope next album, I hope that Lady Gaga, when she's putting together a creative team, she would maybe look for some people with some, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, creativity. Yeah, that's it. Get some creative people on your creative team. Maybe come out with a better name and a better logo. I mean, what's next? Are they going to come out with album 6? Is it going to be called Lightning Bolt by Pipeline, and they're going to have a orange and red, or a yellow and red lightning bolt like the ones that Jerry Lopez and Rory Russell used to ride in the 1970s and 1980s? Okay. So, and to take this to another perhaps ridiculous extreme, since her legal team has put so much time into proving that Lady Gaga's Mayhem on a sweatshirt is not going to confuse consumers about Lost Surfboards' Mayhem on a sweatshirt, then what's to stop Lost Surfboards from coming out with a line of surfboards inspired by Lady Gaga? I mean, if two sweatshirts with the same name on them and a very similar appearing logo are not confusing the consumer, then surely no consumer who's there to buy a surfboard is going to instead buy a ticket to a Lady Gaga concert. So, I mean, I can just see it now. Lost could come out with their own line. They could maybe not use Lady Gaga, maybe use the Gaga Tube Rider line. Here's, you have the Mayhem line on this side of the surf shop, the Gaga Tube Rider line on this one. Or maybe the Lady Gaga line of, hey, you want a Lady Gaga longboard? Oh, we've got the Lady Gaga fish right over here, Lady Gaga twin fins, Lady Gaga tri-fin thrusters. We've even got the Lady Gaga belly boards. I mean, how would she feel about that? And I'm kind of kidding, but I'm kind of not. This whole situation just rubs me the wrong way. If you're creative, be creative. The end.